Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Football and Grits. Today is Monday, November 14th. We got a lot to get to. We've got a resurgent Auburn program and some interesting questions about what to do with their future. We have Tennessee's path to the playoff, which has opened up a little bit thanks to some Pac-12 after dark. And A&M in Kentucky, Brody, it's not going well down there.
Not.
But first, Brody, we have an SEC championship officially lined up. LSU versus Georgia, which also means, Brody, that we will be crossing paths in Atlanta. We may need to have an in-person Football and Grits episode.
Can't wait.
Unfortunately, we may have to do it late Saturday because I have to get on a plane Sunday morning and fly to Charlotte and present the Nagurski Trophy, which is actually very fun.
What a humble brag.
Well, no, last year it was very interesting. Last year I had to just sit up there and look pretty while Heather Dinich, one of the greats, got to do all the talking and present the award. But you basically spend the day with like the nominees and like the coach. So like Shane Beamer last year was hanging out, and then Will Anderson and Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis, a delightful person, fantastic kid. I think one of my favorite notes from last year is he was asking us advice because he wanted to buy his mom a Peloton for Christmas, but his mom was his financial advisor, or his financial manager, and he didn't know how to get $2,000 or something out of his account. He's like, "What do you think I should do with his like NIL money?" It was fantastic. Anyway,
that sounds amazing.
So I got to do that Sunday, or fly down there Sunday, and then I'll work Sunday, and then the banquet stuff is Monday night. It's very fun, and it's pretty cool. But Brody, we got to do an in-person.
This is our moment.
We
are an SEC show, and it'll be the SEC title game. This is our Super Bowl. Yeah, we gotta play it up.
Exactly. So anyway, Brody,
maybe I don't love grits, by the way.
Yes, I gotta say I don't love how LSU matches up with Georgia. I don't know.
Yeah, call me crazy.
I don't know. I think the quarterback run game. I feel like Georgia can shut that down relatively. I wouldn't say easily, but I feel like they can eliminate that.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Jay Daniels has the accuracy to stretch the field and be the quarterback that he needs to be to push them. LSU, it'll be interesting, the matchup on the other side of the ball.
That will be
obviously
pretty good. Yeah.
LSU has reached the point now where limit Harold Perkins is like task number one for LSU's defense. But
unreal.
We won't go too deep down the rabbit hole, Brody, but what's your first feel of LSU's chances to win their first SEC title since the long time ago of 2019?
Well, yeah, I think you kind of hit it overall. I generally agree that, they're going to – I think Colin Wilson of the Action Network, does great work, I think put it at 15-point projection. Like, they're not going to have a good chance in this game. And I think you're right that, like, Georgia's one of the teams best designed to stop their offense, right? It's like LSU's going to – their receivers, right? The whole, like, storyline of their growth offensively is Jaden Daniels finally started trusting these receivers in one-on-ones. And they're going to beat every other team they play probably in those one-on-ones. Don't know if they're going to beat Georgia's corners in those one-on-ones.
A lot of teams run into that. I think that sounds a lot like what Tennessee was saying after that. I still generally, I guess just by nature of playing up front, Alabama probably has the best chance to go toe-to-toe with them just because these games are decided on the line of scrimmage. I would like to be – I'd be intrigued if we get it to see a Tennessee-Georgia rematch. In the in the playoff, if they get to play indoors or something like that. I'd be intrigued to see that again and see what adjustments Georgia makes, what adjustments Tennessee makes, because you just don't know how that's going to play out. I think everybody thought they knew what was going to happen in the SEC championship last year. Oh, the Alabama reckoning is coming. They've been skating all season. They're going to get smacked by Georgia. That did not happen.
It's true.
And then, of course, you got the rematch. Georgia made some adjustments. And Georgia got a little bit more exotic. They were pretty simple in that game and got torched by Bama. And it's an interesting prospect. But either way, people have been counting out this LSU team all year.
Yeah.
And if they, I think for the next, 2 weeks, they're going to hear it again. LSU's got no shot. LSU can't beat this Georgia team. And maybe that's true. But maybe it's not, bro.
Well, and the thing is, it's like, LSU, I think, Saturday's game against Arkansas probably proved just reminded you, like, this isn't like a great team. Like, the offense really struggled against Barry Odom's scheme, and like
Mm-hmm.
that's not like if you view this correctly, LSU fans, like that's a good thing. Let me frame this, like, because it proves to you what they're doing is so impressive. Like, this team is by default has a ceiling. Like, there is a limit to what they can do, and they're just finding ways to win through coaching, through honestly toughness a lot of times. Like, they keep getting better in second halves, all that stuff. Like, they win every tough situation. Like, be happy about that, and honestly, just add some context. Like, it's almost like shouldn't be glossed over. Like, LSU won the West, and it's 2019 to a lot of people is such like a meteor that like it almost doesn't get added into the context, and almost like shouldn't, right? Like, it stands out so weirdly from the last 12 years of LSU football. It was just like, I don't know, it doesn't get counted in, and if you take that out, LSU hasn't won the West since 2011. Like, as much as in our brains, LSU's always,
I did not know that.
right?
Yeah.
Like, in our head, it's always one of the better programs, and it is, but it's been a tier below clearly for about 11 years, other than 2019. Like, 2019 almost like distracted us from the fact that LSU hasn't won 10 games in a regular season since, other than 19, since 2012. Like, that's kind of jarring. And the fact that Brian Kelly is, assuming they beat A&M and UAB, will be 10-2 year one with, like we keep saying, probably the worst roster he'll have. It is just kind of jarring, and it's like LSU's going to lose this game. Most likely will lose this game, and we're all, I think, accepting of that. But like, LSU fans should just take a moment and be like, holy crap, you just won the West, the consensus normally toughest division all in football.
Mm-hmm. Brody, is there you're more in tune with the LSU fan base. Is there an element of looking back at that 2019 year and being like, why couldn't we do this every year from like 11 to 18 when they had OBJ and all these freaks and they're struggling to get across the 50-yard line in a national championship game and halfway bringing about the playoff era with an ugly game that just makes America furious?
No, that 2019 in so many ways was just like vindication for every LSU fan and most of us, right? Who were just like, this is one of the 5 most talented teams every single year. If you can just put a functional, modernized scheme, this team should be a juggernaut. And you literally, and granted, Joe Burrow's a different thing, but the rest of it, it's like, yeah, you literally saw we talked about 2 weeks ago. I think this isn't like, that 2019 team wasn't some like holy crap scheme. They just finally modernized and they just manhandled people. And I think it was just, that was evidence of that to a lot of people that like, see, I've been telling you. Yeah. And
I was that person. I'd watch a lot of Les Miles. I'd watch a lot of that. And I'd be like, boy, this team is really good, but they should be a lot better. Like, that was just like LSU for like 6 years.
It's true. And then like even 2020, it was like, that wasn't a great team, but those first 3 games with Miles Brennan, they were averaging like 550 yards a game or something. They were going off again. And then like, the program just kind of got screwed from there, playing true freshman quarterbacks. And Jake Peets was a pretty bad OC hire. And it was just like, and I think this year, even though it's not a great offense, is kind of proving that same theory again. Like, man, these weapons should just be able to do stuff. Like, why can't you figure it out? And I think that's why next year there's probably a lot of reason to be like, this offense should be humming next year.
Yeah, I think it'll be I think that's a big reason why this LSU team is so jarring to me, because I'm so used to LSU being like, y'all should be giving people a little bit more. And this team, it feels like it's just banging its head against its ceiling every single week.
It's the best way to put it.
This is the best person. This is the best possible version of this team. And also,
dead accurate. Yeah.
I feel bad for the A&M fans listening, because they've been just trying. And Jimbo, the excuse for a lot of time, well, you got to give him time. He's still, Bama's in the division. It's hard.
Yep. Ooh, great point.
And here comes Brian Kelly.
With a roster that had 39 scholarship players in the Texas Bowl 8-10 months ago.
Who I guess now is underpaid.
Let's give another fully guaranteed contract.
Yeah, BK's agent is going to clip this and end up getting him an extension after the year. See, even the host of Football and Grits is saying my guy's underpaid, clearly. But it's just, it's a jarring thing. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a fun game. And, we've seen this LSU team again. Yeah, we've seen this LSU team. I I feel like they have the ability to maybe ugly it up a little bit.
Maybe
it's a 2017 kind of game
because they
I
do
could see
probably match up well on the other side, right? Like
I think so, and I think they got the bodies.
They have the body. Like Harold Perkins was put on this earth to probably cover tight ends, right? Like that's probably like what he is designed to do, and that's only one of them. So I don't know.
And we've mentioned it on this show in the past, Brody, but we glossed over it in recent weeks.
Yeah.
People still forget that this team lost in probably an All-American in week 1 in Mason Smith.
True. Like it's the biggest bummer. Like
it really is.
Just as a viewer, like it wouldn't change their season, really. I don't think, but
probably
like
not.
Just as a football nerd, right? It's like this defense is so fun, and Mason Smith probably would have been. Yeah, I think he probably would have been the best. Jalen Carter and him would have been the best 2D tackles in the country.
And if he is on the field against Georgia, if they could slow down Georgia's defense or slow down Georgia's offense, take away the running game, he'd be the biggest reason why, and that would give them a great shot.
And imagine that defense if like BJ Ojolari, because Perkins is now the guy you have to worry about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if you have Mason Smith and now BJ Ojolari is the third guy you have to like worry about.
That's ridiculous.
That's really great, right? That front almost like it's up there, but obviously we can all play the what if game, but just kind of crazy.
Well, Brody, that matchup is certain. What is less certain, but slightly more certain than it was a week ago, the playoff picture. You know, the Vols. It's been a complicated conversation because I will tweet things or write things about Tennessee's playoff hopes, and I think just because Tennessee has not been in this picture for a long time and has not been paying attention to how the committee works, there's a swath of people who don't necessarily sort of get like how important different things are. Top 25 wins are massive. It's much more important. Margin of victory, the committee doesn't really care. The committee sort of views wins as like convincing or unconvincing.
Yeah,
like if you're TCU and you're having to come back from double-digit deficits all the time, you're going to get dinged. That's why TCU is in this position that they are. If you beat a team by 20 versus 40, they don't really care. It's not that big of a deal. So top 25 wins matter. So, you know, you're sitting there, Kentucky losing was not good for Tennessee. And then the Pac-12 does what the Pac-12 does, which is cannibalize itself like it does every single year.
Yep.
Washington goes and beats Oregon at Autzen. Incredible game.
Such a good game.
That game delivered. So now Oregon, who I did think Oregon, if they went all the way, I thought Oregon was going to get in over Tennessee.
Probably fair.
Not happening anymore. UCLA was probably a tweener. I thought maybe a one-loss UCLA that was a Pac-12 champion would I think it'd be close between them and Tennessee. Not going to happen.
Yep.
They lost to Arizona. Jaden DeLora, absolute chaos agent, but a fantastic game. I did step and watch that. I have not watched as much Pac-12 football as I would have liked. Having an infant will do that.
I know this is sacrilege on this show, but Pac-12 is just good now. It went from literally I don't ever want to watch a Pac-12 game to like I want to watch Washington State play. I don't know, like Arizona. Like I don't. It's what a time. But continue.
The influx of quarterback talent and good coaches has done a lot to the Pac-12. That has really enhanced them. But anyway, this is not football and salmon, so we'll get back to it.
You had that quick. That was good. That was solid. I like that.
Anyway,
John is writing on his notes right now, like football and salmon. That's our new show.
Exactly. Now USC, I just don't think USC has the wins, and regardless of USC's resume, I don't think USC is going to get to the finish line. I really don't.
Well, I don't think they get to the finish line is the key, but I do think they would probably get in, right? Like,
it would be close. But the good news for Tennessee now is that your path is a lot wider now. TCU, we'll see if they get to the finish line. They've got Baylor. They do still have the Big 12 championship game against TBD. That will be a tough game for them. And TCU is good, but they are not dominant. Yeah. TCU undefeated, obviously, will get in over Tennessee. TCU with one loss, even as a Big 12 champion, no shot to get in over Tennessee. So Georgia's there. Yeah. Now, the Ohio State-Michigan factor will be a little bit complicated. I'm going to write about this later this week, sort of breaking down every team that still has a shot for the playoff. There's like 8 teams, I think, 8 or 9 that still have a reasonable shot. Now, if you're Michigan and you lose close in Columbus, that you got a shot. Yeah. Now, if you're Ohio State,
it's tough because neither team has like any other good wins.
Yeah,
other
it's
than
true.
Penn State, so it's just
anyway.
tough.
Yeah. Now, if you're Ohio State, even if it's close, if you lose at home, your loss is at home. You don't have a lot of great wins.
Yeah, I think you're
You
out.
don't have a division championship. You don't have a conference championship. I think if Michigan loses close, they will probably stay above Tennessee. Now, it might get a little weird. It might get a little weird when they start matching up.
But to your point, the wins matter. Like, it's not even comparable. Like, Tennessee's, I might even agree with you that Michigan is underrated, like, would deserve it. But, like, Tennessee's wins are, it's like 5-1 if you're ranking, like, good wins.
I agree with you. But at this point, what the committee does is what the committee does. And I think we have 7.5 years of data that they do seem to really appreciate teams that are dominant. Now, dominant doesn't necessarily have to mean 100 points, but it means you're not flirting. You don't need anything crazy to survive. Yeah. Now, Tennessee, I think the committee, for better or worse, is going to look at them and say, okay, Michigan's schedule is terrible, but how you play matters and who you play also matters. And Tennessee needed a little bit of magic to get out of Pitt. You
really think they get dinged for Pitt?
Yes, I do. I think
I'm deferring to you.
Dinged,
you have more experience
with
this.
Not dinged, but just when they look at it, doesn't really. I don't think it matters all that much because I think the question for Tennessee is going to be, more so them versus the Pac-12 champion if USC gets there.
Yes,
because Georgia's going to be that number 1 spot. If Tennessee gets in, they'll probably get bumped to number 3 because they aren't going to want Tennessee, Georgia in the first round.
Good call. Yeah.
So whatever happens, they're gonna shuffle that around for matchup sake. So they'll probably play the number 2 seed. So good news for Tennessee because that's we'll see what that matchup is because I think Tennessee matches up pretty well with Michigan. I think they match up really badly with Ohio State.
Probably fair.
That secondary in Ohio State I think could feast on them, but Michigan. I have some questions about, I think Tennessee could hold up against their run game really well. But anyway,
I agree.
Tennessee fans root for Michigan. Either way, so Tennessee fans right now, all you basically need is a TCU loss, and that almost guarantees you a spot, basically.
Yep. I think so.
Yeah, and then a USC loss probably does the Pac-12 in. And even if USC runs the table, I think it's going to be close.
I was going to say, I'm actually at a point of and I'm deferring to you. You have more experience with this and learning about the committee, but I'm almost assuming Tennessee is more likely than not to be in.
Yes, they are.
Okay,
I would say it's like 60% at this point.
That sounds about
Before
right.
Last week, I would have said 45, 50%, something like that, because I kind of thought this might happen to the Pac-12 because I've watched a good amount of Oregon, a good amount of UCLA. Good teams, but flawed teams. You saw their defense. I mean, these are not, I wouldn't say one-dimensional teams, but certainly beatable teams. Nobody is terrified of Oregon or UCLA. I thought they were gettable, and sure enough, they were against a pretty average to bad Arizona team. Bad but fun, I will say. Arizona is really fun this year.
No, yeah, I like what they're headed, but yeah.
Anyway, and so Tennessee's in a really, really good spot right now. And at this point, you're just looking to better your odds, which are already pretty good. And so you got to feel pretty good if you're Tennessee. But the SEC is sitting pretty. Tennessee's got South Carolina and Vanderbilt. They're 21-point favorites this week. Vanderbilt, I just don't think has the dudes to beat them. Although maybe Kentucky would disagree. But exactly. we'll get to the Cats here in a second. But the SEC is sitting pretty to get 2 teams in again.
Can I go further? Again, this is not. We both do not think LSU is winning that game. I know we agree. But say they win, and let's say USC loses.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't 3 SEC teams suddenly likely?
It's
never happened, so it'd
possible.
be really tough. But I feel like that'd be 50% or something. If that happens, because LSU would have been stuck in this. Hey, you have 2 losses, but look at all these other good contenders. All of a sudden, that's been cleared out a little bit, and it's I don't know how you don't, 1, put the SEC title team, but 2, a team that would have had 4 of the best wins consecutive and hasn't lost since September, or early October. Georgia's getting in. I think it's fair to say Georgia's just in no matter what at this point.
Yeah.
And and Tennessee has a better resume than LSU overall. So it's 3 is not out of the question, and that is bonkers because it still hasn't happened. But yes, to your point, I think LSU is firmly sitting pretty at 2 teams. It looks pretty good. And I think the odds would probably put it that those 2 teams are 2 of the 3 most likely teams to win it all. If you're being really honest with yourself.
Well, you're sitting there too. Again,
Ohio State's very flawed.
I would not take Tennessee against Ohio State. I think I'd take Tennessee against Michigan. Which is
I
ironic because I think Michigan's better than Ohio State.
completely agree. I think Michigan
But
is
I
better
think
than
the
Ohio State,
matchup
but
is
would get
different.
whooped.
I think Michigan matches up really well against Ohio State. And
I couldn't agree more.
So if Michigan wins that game, you're sitting there and you're saying we might get an All SEC national championship for the second year in a row, which is
just
third
a hilarious
time in
5 years? Yeah, 6 years.
And I have to say, Georgia Tennessee was the most watched game of the season so far. I think it would do good numbers again. I think people would be intrigued.
I don't think it would be a boredom thing, because the boredom also comes from I see Alabama and Georgia play each other every year. I see LSU and Alabama play each other literally every year. Like, there's no fatigue with this, really. This is still new to people. So I think people are in love with watching this Tennessee team.
Well, and they're fun.
Power.
Like those, like the infamous Alabama LSU game in 11.
No one wanted to watch that again.
I don't want to see that. Like, first of all, we already saw it, and two, those teams were not fun. They were not fun to watch. Like, that was the Alabama death machine, like the peak Saban, before the offensive revolution. Like, those were not fun teams. They just would sit there and they just be 400 pounds just sitting on top of you for 60 minutes.
That's perfect.
And then they would just run the ball, and then they would beat everyone, 31-10 and move on to the next one. And it's just like, the people don't want to watch that. Tennessee, Georgia, I think people still would like to see that. And I think it would be an interesting matchup on a neutral field. Absolutely. And indoors.
Ooh, that's a great point, actually. Yeah. And also, even Georgia is still, it's not new to people, but it's still it's not some established power that's just been ruining the world for 10 years and you're sick of it. It's just okay, they're still kind of new. It's oh, cool, a new dynasty. And I think there's still the part of the brain that wants that, I think.
And I think so again, for Tennessee fans, I was very intrigued because so I went to watch the evening games for about half of them at a sports bar, and so I was with some reporter friends, and the Tennessee fans that were there were totally ignoring Texas and TCU and rooting hard against Georgia. And every time Mississippi State was doing something, I was kind of looking around and I was like,
do you not know?
I know. I was kind of y'all should be paying way more attention. Yeah. Y'all should be the biggest Texas fans.
It's the SEC,
in the world,
though, man.
Right
Your
now.
hatred still wins. It's not about rationality.
But I think the playoff era I've said it before, I'll say it again. The playoff era makes for strange bedfellows. You have to root for weird teams because basically in the playoff era, every team that you beat, you need them to win out. Every team that you beat, you need every team that you beat, your resume is attached to them. Yep. And so if they go off a cliff, that hurts you. If they have a huge, Tennessee, nobody thought LSU was going to do this when Tennessee rolled them. That's been huge for Tennessee. For them to beat LSU, not only to beat them, but beat them in the way that they did and where they did. And do that and come away. And now LSU's on fire. You've got to win over the SEC West champion by 4 touchdowns on their home field. That's a pretty good win. So, you're sitting there and you got to wonder, hey, there's an adjustment here. But maybe if Tennessee's hanging around the playoff for longer, they'll sort of get with it a bit. Because I get it, but Tennessee needed some help on Saturday. They got some.
Help.
But it's gonna be interesting to see. Now, Brody, what is happening at Auburn University right now?
Sell me on it, baby.
It is something I don't know that I've seen before. And I think if you haven't paid close enough attention to what's happening there, it's not just that Auburn beat A&M. That's nice. They won the game. Yeah. You need a win as a proof of concept. But I'm a big vibes guy, Brody. The vibes at Auburn for the last year and a half have been just awful. Obviously, you had the offseason stuff. Bunch of players leave. You hear the kind of allegations of mistreatment from the players. Then you pile on with the sort of lies and really unfair stuff about Brian Harson's family. But still.
And even just on top of that, just vibes of Brian Harsin was just never
it was very boring. Never had excitement. It was very boring as all that stuff. It was just not a good situation. I did the Auburn State of the Program, and part of what we do is talk to coaches that know them and kind of talking about their situation. Most of the coaches I've talked to, unimpressed. One coach I talked to used the term dead man walking with Brian Harsin, and this was in I think this was in June, and it was pretty obvious. I didn't even think that was a hot take. I think it was just the reality. Yeah. And sure enough, the first chance, well, I say the first chance, when they got enough chances, Auburn let Brian Harsin walk. Yeah. And the cleansing fire that has come over Auburn. So they beat Texas A&M. And I think you saw shades of it last week. We kind of mentioned that Cadillac had done some things. They played really hard. But if you did not see Cadillac's post-game interview with the great Cole Kublik, who, by the way, another Auburn guy, he played for the program. He understands the program. You need to hear what Cadillac was saying. And not only hear it, but watch him. Here's Cadillac after the game on Saturday after beating the Aggies.
Thank you for your support and attendance.
How does that feel?
All glory go to God. God is good. I'm so appreciative of this Auburn family. I mean, these fans, they showed up and showed out, man. The energy, the atmosphere here. Man, I just think I'm so appreciative for this institution. I'm forever indebted to it. I love serving these young men, man. It's coaching staff. It's bigger than me. It's just not my show, man. We are together. We family. So I'm excited. 1-1. 1-1.
You mentioned the energy. You mentioned the passion. Jordan was talking about in the broadcast. We were in a timeout. He's like, look at the Auburn sideline right now. These guys lost 5 straight games. It looks like they're playing for an SEC West title. The fans in the stands, how did you do it? How did you inject this kind of life into this football team?
Serve, discipline, believe, these kids, these staff. I mean, people around the building, the Auburn family. And these kids just need a little love. Need to be loved on with the discipline. They need to know it's okay to make mistakes. They gonna fall, but as coaches gonna be there to pick them back up. And regardless, we got their back. They had to open their heart, and that's all they did, to be honest with you.
Coach, what's next for this football team?
Western Kentucky. Like, look, we got 2 more games. So we gonna enjoy this one tonight. We gonna flush it. And man, we gonna prepare, man. We enjoying the journey together. Like, we writing our history and what we want this 2022 team to be like, man. We gonna finish. We gonna do what we do.
I got one.
Unreal.
I got to call a repairman because I got a hole in my drywall over here. Right, I just ran through it.
And the timing of Smag surfing escalating, right? Is it was unbelievable. That is so cool.
So, listen, I do think hiring Cadillac full time is crazy.
Yeah,
I just don't think it's that crazy. I think that there is a path where you can do this and keep these vibes. Now, one, having a head coach that the players obviously respond to and will listen to and want to play for and want to run through a wall for, that means something. And having that guy be the figurehead of your program, I say figurehead not as an insult, but just that's the guy who's the face of your program. Obviously, you need a lot of help. This is a guy that has been in coaching 4 years. He was in the Alliance before that. I'm not saying that you have to do that or that you need to do that. I think certainly whoever comes on has to retain him. But if there's a path where you have Caddy as your head coach, you bring in some very expensive, very good coordinators, similar to what Arkansas did with Barry Odom, Kendall Briles, and you have this guy that's your sort of culture guy, your program guy. You bring in an associate head coach who knows more about the nuts and bolts of kind of how to run a program, and you just let Caddy be Caddy and let it roll. I've heard crazier ideas. I'm just saying. I don't think I would do it. I think you have to retain him, whoever comes on. I don't think I would do it. But, man, if they keep this rolling, and then, of course, we'll see what happens with Bama, I think you have to you have to think about it. The Bama game is where it kind of all hinges, I think. If you get embarrassed in that game, then you kind of let the air out of the balloon.
Yeah, well, shoot,
Man, if
SP Plus has them as a dog against Western Kentucky. I hate to like be the bearer of bummer news, but it's a bummer.
Yeah, but you can see how guys respond to him, and I think what you've seen from them in the locker room, from the players, they won some games last year, Brody. They won some games this year. You did not see that out of these guys, and I just think there are not a lot of head coaches that players respond to like that, and I think it's something that is not the craziest idea. It can't be worse, Brody. Let's say that. The guy that they just hired, it just did not work for a million different reasons.
Yeah.
How crazy is this? Am I insane?
You're not insane, but you can't do it, right? But to your point, like I think there's an argument to be made Cadillac would be a better hire than Brian Harsin. Like even like with our 2020 brain, like you know what I'm saying? Like even before we knew how bad it would go, I think you could convince me that version of me, the Cadillac now would be better than Brian Harsin then. And
I think if I can put on my Ari Wasserman hat for a second, it was very clear that Brian Harsin did not understand like talent
accumulation of talent
acquisition business. Yes, it's about coaching. Yes, it's about X's and O's. College football is about talent acquisition. What can you do to get guys?
Yeah,
and he just never seemed to understand that. Listen, what I was sitting there, I actually texted Ari after this because I said, Ari, you'll be happy to know I was in Kirby Smart's press conference after the Tennessee win. What was Kirby Smart talking about, Brody? He was talking about recruiting. He said, hey, this atmosphere, it's going to get us some more guys, an incredible recruiting atmosphere. We're going to get some more guys that are going to be on this field 2 years from now helping us win games. Yeah. That's the mindset you have to have. This is why Dan Mullen got fired. Now, does Caddy have that? I don't know. We'll see. I can see how if he shows up in a living room, he does. But Brian Harsin did not get that. You got to have a coach that understands that.
Yeah, and just to again, I don't think you can, but again, have you ever in your entire life seen a crowd like that for a 3-win football team going into
I have not.
Like the vibes even outside the stadium, before you keep saying vibes, and that's dead on. Like, and you saw it last week too about the way everyone was rallying and all that. But this, like the way Jordan Hare before the game, it was just rocking. It was like they thought they were playing, like Cole said, it looked like they thought they were playing for the SEC West. And it's like that is a charisma and an energy being brought that is just jarring. It's like I can't think of any comp ever about just like an interim just being like, hey, everyone in this state, you believe again, even though you have no reason to believe. But unfortunately, and also I think it's worth saying, like, we've been around this a bit. There's so many times with an interim like this, you have your antenna up for like opportunism and like this kind of cynical, like I'm about to rally everyone around me on a PR tour. There is none of that in there. Like that is so, those answers are so like ingrained in his bones. Like these guys, like I love them. It is so, if he's fake, give him an Oscar because that's incredible because nothing about it is. But
I think there's like an element of he loves Auburn and he clearly loves the kids. And that will get you a long way in this business because there's a lot of coaches that don't care about the school and don't care about the kids. And it shows.
It's all them. Yep. Now, unfortunately, though, it's just maybe even if this was a different time, maybe if this was like, I'm trying to think of another, like Florida replacing Dan Mullen, you know, like maybe that would work. You can't get this wrong right now if you're Auburn. Like this is so specific to the situation. You just cannot do it because one, this program has, especially with Oklahoma and Texas joining, there is a risk of this program like losing its place, you know, really losing its place in the foothold of college football. I'm not saying like you're there, I'm not being dramatic, but like you can't mess this up. And you need some, and yeah, you wrote this well in your piece this morning. Like one, you point out your own rule, like don't hire a coach that no one else in the conference is actually would hire. And no one else would probably hire Cadillac Williams. And you need vision right now. You need, like, even it's never just as simple as recruiting, as you point out. It's vision. It's the ability to be like, I need this infrastructure. Here's my plan. Here's what I'm going to do. And Cadillac's not there yet, right? Like, it's just reality. Of course he's not. He shouldn't be. No one would be. And I love the idea if they make the right hire, he's your number 2 or whatever you want to get title you want to give him. He learns, and then I don't know, by 2024, give that guy like a really good G5 job. And I bet that guy is going to thrive. And I want to see him like really rise up the ranks. He's awesome. And he's going to do big things. It's just naive to put him there because you need, even if it's the Dion types that like, hey man, I got questions. Like you need somebody who really is going to elevate the energy, not just the energy, but the plan, recruiting, and all that of this program. You just can't take a risk right now like that.
A Bama win complicates it, Brody. Because
Dude, imagine if that game was in Jordan-Hare. It's such a bummer that it's not, because it would have been the best. I would have skipped the LSU A&M and gone to that game.
I think I would have considered actually if the Iron Bowl was in Auburn, because I would have thought about it.
All-time Iron Bowl, like unreal. Yeah. And now it probably won't be, but still, like
if he wins in Tuscaloosa, man, that
it gets
you're
messy.
gonna have a revolt on your hands if they don't hire him. Like certainly he'd be retained at that point. You know, obviously depending on that's a question. If you bring in coaches to interview, that has to be.
Yeah. By the way, you notice John Cohen was standing right behind him in that interview, right?
Yeah, I saw him.
Athletic director of Fortune.
Auburn's brand new athletic director.
Yes.
So it's a fascinating situation to watch. I have not seen a program flip like that. Like you kind of see some juice, and I will say it's gone bad before. I think the most famous example to me, the late Bill Stewart at West Virginia. I mean, I think the infamous "Leave No Doubt" speech before they ran Oklahoma off the field in that. I want to say it was it the Sugar Bowl? I forget, but it was after Rich Rod leaves and everybody's really down on the program, but the vibes were good. They were just a really good team that was really mad about Rich Rod leaving. Auburn, we said that they haven't been a disaster at any point this year. They've just been kind of bad. But I think the playing hard. I know this is risky. I know it. I don't think I would even do it.
It goes bad.
I'm just
more
pointing
than
out that there's a path. I do agree. I think the odds that it goes bad are more likely than it goes good. But the path to doing it, because you don't have to pay him a lot. I said he shouldn't do the job for free, but he might do it for free. But spend all your money on coordinators and then bring in, like Lincoln Riley brought in Ruffin McNeil when he was really early on in Oklahoma, something like that.
And the plan in 17 for Ogeron was it was supposed to be Lane Kiffin and Dave Aranda, and then I'm pretty sure like Saban kind of found a way to make sure Lane got a head coaching job instead. But like that was the plan, and that would have worked, right? So.
Yeah, we'll see. I will say that Auburn, it's got to be nice to have some hope because it has been bleak for a while there, and so props to Auburn. It does mean a lot there. Brody, on the opposite end of the vibe spectrum, we got to start with the Aggies, I guess, right?
Yeah. It's just tough because what else can we say except it just keeps getting worse than we thought it could. And that's what's so scary. But
6-game losing streak.
Unbelievable.
I know they've had injuries. I know the flu stuff has come up. That's been a big part of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, they probably don't I don't know if they lose that Florida game, but still, it doesn't matter.
At the end of the day, though, you're last in the SEC West.
And they're the 5th team ever to be preseason top 6 and miss a bowl. And there's still 2 games to go. History is being made, my friend.
They're the first SEC team to officially be eliminated from a bowl.
Oh, my God. Yeah. It is.
It's hard to believe. It's hard.
And when it's this bad, and it's this is repeating stuff we've been talking about for 6 weeks, 8 weeks more.
But I will say the way that it's breaking now,
I
think certainly Jimbo, if it was just 7-5 again, then Jimbo maybe doesn't have to do the whole offensive. Now, you can't get out from under Jimbo, but I think you're going to see a staff overhaul. No question. You have
to your point that you brought up by the way, Catherine B., our good friend, points out Flu wasn't around for Mississippi State. Flu was not around for App State, and you were absolutely correct, Catherine. It's your point that you brought up so long ago. It's the leverage thing, right? Before you talked every week about they have zero leverage. I think they have leverage now. Not leverage to literally fire, but it is jumped the shark so far on the Jimbo thing. I
think Jimbo has to see it. Even if Jimbo, as headstrong as he is, like any other coach, and as I can fix this, I just got to grab the handlebars even tighter.
And by the way, I stand by, they probably could get the money. I feel confident they could get the money. And I feel confident
they really wanted to.
I'm not, but bear with me. And I feel confident they even are crazy enough to do it. But I think I wonder, and we'll never know probably, do they get evidence they have the money and just bring it to Jimbo and be like, hey, man, we can do this? They're not going to, but we can do it. We have the ability. We have billionaires, man. But so you got to change. And I just wonder if the leverage has finally shifted and the decommits that we've already talked about. And that's been the thing we've talked about every week, right? It's it's not just about how this year is because, yeah, in theory, they should be good next year. It's the fact that this could unravel, that the portal might get hit, that your current classes might get hit, and you're already starting to see that, man. And the vibes are just getting so worse that I can't imagine a 5-star wanting to join it because it's so messy.
They got to hold. I think that those changes are how you hold together the portal too, because you can sell something to those guys.
True, that's a good point.
Okay,
and also a good hire. A good hire sometimes brings their own guys too. Like a lot of good stuff can happen, but it's like the thing that has to have you so scared though is like if you have this much talent and it's getting this much worse each week, like it is just free fall. There's something so institutionally wrong. It is not even, you can't even, we spent the first half of the year being like, this is the offensive scheme being a joke. It's past that, man. Like it is, something is truly wrong there. And that's scary.
Yeah. I will say, endowments are not the best measure because the endowments get complicated, but I think people don't understand how much money is in the oil schools in Texas. Like if you look at the schools with the biggest endowments, it's like Yale, Harvard, Texas A&M, it's like crazy. It's ridiculous.
They can get any coach in the world they want. Like that is the actual reality. In every sport, by the way. Like I believe they put the most money toward college baseball now. It used to always be LSU, and now it's like
Texas
A&M.
Stadium is super nice, and so is A&M's.
Yes.
Yeah.
They got Jim Schlossnagle from TCU. Like that, you're not supposed to be able to get that guy. Like it's wild how much money they have to be able to get Buzz Williams. I know it's not like the sexiest thing, but like they can get whoever they want, and they can fire whoever they want. And again, I'm not like literally sitting here talking about firing Jimbo Fisher, but it's just I just keep repeating like I think the leverage is maybe finally shifting. And
I don't know that they'll need it.
So who would you like them to hire? I'm just curious. I don't expect.
Well, so I was having this conversation too because I was talking to some of our colleagues last night about my Cadillac take, and they're like, "Well, but there's not a lot of like hotshot coordinators out there that you can go get."
It doesn't need to be a hotshot. There's a lot of good coordinators.
I'd have to look. You put me on the spot. So I'd have to look and see.
It's an unfair question. Yes.
Yeah, I'd have to look and see what that.
The best hire ever, honestly, would be like. Well, it depends. Like, actually, better question for it. Do you want them to go Tennessee offense route, or do you even just want them to go a better, like a Jeff Grimes like type? Not literally, but like.
Yeah, I think
Jeff Grimes is Baylor's OC.
I'm trying to wonder if A&M is too prideful to go embrace the Baylor offense because they really hated Baylor back in the day.
By the way, I do love that both names I just mentioned are both Baylor connected. Oops.
Yeah, somewhat. But Jeff Grimes is part of the Baylor program, not the Baylor offense.
Yes, true.
So, I've always referred to that offense as the power spread. It doesn't really have a name, like Bryles never really
completely.
Coined.
It's how I felt about Dan Mullen's old Mississippi State teams too.
Yeah, Bryles never really coined a name that he would call it, but it's
kind of what was the famous term Mike Mularkey called the Tennessee offense? Smash mouth spread.
Yeah, something like that.
That didn't really work, but
yeah. So I'm skeptical. So the combination of one, especially with Jimbo and his pedigree, the Baylor offense has a very checkered history with translating to the NFL. If you talk to coaches about it, it's like becoming fluent in French and then going to Japan for the next year. It doesn't do you that much good in terms of the next level. There's a lot of guys that have been drafted very highly out of this offense and have struggled a lot. Like if you look at the best receivers that have come out of that, Terrence Williams, Corey Coleman, all those guys, it hadn't gone great because it doesn't really translate. Just the way that they run routes, their route tree is a lot more simple. Anyway,
so you're saying like,
so I wonder if so I think A&M might say, well, I don't know that we want to go that route, but we'll see. But I there's a lot.
Can we also just say like, it's just worth mentioning, like as much as we talk about the offense, and A&M being 82nd in SP plus offense is insane. They're only 29th in defense too.
The defense has been pretty good.
But that's not great. That's not what it should be. Like,
well, but the defensive line is held up. They're young. They rebuilt their entire defensive line.
Like, it's
all that.
I just think it's
Johnson's
more.
Played well.
I think
they'll. I mean, I think part of that does SP plus adjust for field position for defensive ratings.
I think so, big time. Yeah,
it's
like one of their
probably
big
right.
things.
Yeah. So we'll see. You'd have to look. The defense hadn't been as good as I think you thought they might be, but they were rebuilding. Ultimately.
You're right. I just wanted to throw that out there, but you are correct. Yes.
We should move on to Kentucky, Brody.
Yes,
because
that's actually more like I'm tired of talking about it.
That's an interesting situation because it's never good when the head coach has to very quickly clarify something he said in the post game. So they asked him if he was considering making offensive staff adjustments in the post game, and he said, "No, we're not doing that." But he was under the impression, I didn't hear the question live, but he was under the impression that they were talking about mid-season, which wouldn't do you a whole lot of good right now.
So then he clarified he went back, make a coaching change?
He went back and said, well, they were talking about in the season. I'm not going to do that because it's not working. I think it starts with the offensive line for them.
Yeah.
From our Pro Football Focus friends. Right now, Kentucky, 117th in pressure rate, 11th in the SEC. That's very bad. Now, we've talked about the Will Levis hate. He has not been good. The decision-making has been bad. Yeah. I think certainly the pressure that he's under is a big part of that. Decision-making is bad. But even the accuracy, he's not looked good. And he talked after the game, talking about wanting to be more of a leader. He felt like there's not a lot of investment. And guys aren't invested the same way when they play a team like Vanderbilt with the attention to details that they are when they play a team like Georgia, who, by the way, Kentucky has this week, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Boy, if their offensive line was struggling like that against Vanderbilt, I have some very bad news for them about Georgia's defensive front. There's this guy named Jalen Carter.
And by the way, remember what Ole Miss did to him? Ole Miss defense doesn't look like that.
Yeah. And I will listen to people who want to make the case that Jalen Carter is the best player in the country. I don't know that I necessarily agree, but he's probably
in the conversation
on the short list of best total football players. I think with Kentucky, it's not so much the scheme. I think they were replacing 3 offensive linemen, including 2 NFL tackles. So you had a lot of issues there. They have not fixed that. The offensive line has been bad. Schematically, they get guys open. They've got some pieces. Barryon Brown, you got to make sure that you're re-recruiting him. Because if I'm Barryon Brown, I'm looking around and I'm saying, I don't love this. Will Levis is leaving. What's the situation, behind him? What do we want to do there? Barryon Brown, you got to re-recruit, I think, a little bit. And then, of course, Tavion Robinson. They got some pieces. I like the scheme, obviously. But if the offensive line, you can only call what you can block. And Kentucky can't really block anything right now. So you're not really having yourself a chance. So I think this week radicalized me against Will Levis a little bit, where I think I've been there for a few weeks. I got all of the question marks and all the skepticism and all the oh, this guy sucks. How is anybody gonna give him a first round pick? I get that, but I was still I don't know, man. He makes some pretty crazy throws.
Yeah.
The arm.
I was a big believer for a while. Yeah.
Now I'm kind of I don't know. At some point, the decision making and the accuracy has just not been there this year. I need to get his on target rate from this year to last year. I feel like it's probably fallen off.
Their quarterback, the way Will Levis plays this might be so dumb, almost feels like the way I feel when I'm watching Texas A&M's offense. Not literally, but there are guys who they make amazing throws, but you feel like they're not the most catchable balls all the time. It's
there's an element of that. Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to describe it. I'm not articulating it right, but it's not the most catchable ball kind of thing. And I guess touch is really what I'm looking for. I don't know. But yeah, we are reaching a point where it's just and this, I need to preface this with 7-5 probably is what they finished, right? 7-5 being your holy crap, things are a bad year is evidence of the reason they need a statue for Mark Stoops and all that. It's unreal. 7 wins at Kentucky, normal. 7 wins got him a contract extension 6 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Let's chill, but still. And also, offensive line is something that sometimes you just don't have in a good O-line one year, and Kentucky, you get a pass for me right now. Yeah,
I think that's
not a pass, but
the fact. I think you hit on something the fact that they're sitting there at 7-5 and people are disappointed I think says something.
It does, but the question we got to start wondering though, and I'm this is hot takey, and I apologize, but
bring it on. I've got the
it's not that bad. But. Every coach has a breaking point. Do we wonder if Mark Stoops, this is just getting closer and closer to, does he start feeling the ceiling more and more? It's one, we all, Andy and Ari and you and me both, I think, all on the same thing of Kentucky's the best job in the country in a lot of ways because you win 8 games and you get the statue. You are happy, you are good. and that's all accurate. I believe that. But there does come a point when you're like 10 years of hitting a ceiling that is just built in. Do you have a breaking point? Like, do you consider?
Well, I think yes, but for somewhat of that reason. But I think
also there's frustrations with him in NIL. I know with like
yes.
Kentucky. Oh, you were
we
can
say NIL if we'd like to. I will call it collectives. The sport is changing. The game is changing, and Kentucky is not a school that you hear about on the forefront, at least in the football program, on the forefront of.
That's why John Cohen just left Mississippi State.
It's a problem, and if you can't get your collective cooking and get a pretty nice little war chest, it's going to get harder for you. Yeah. And I don't think Mark Stoops wants to sit around and start losing some of these recruiting battles that he's been winning in Ohio and with some of the other schools, and trying to fight that uphill battle. And then the players start getting worse as they've recruited. Kentucky's recruiting has been really peaking.
Just because they're not top 5, people don't talk about it. They recruit well. Yeah.
And then as the game changes, well, now your players start getting worse, and then you start getting worse, and people start thinking you're a worse coach.
Yep.
No, maybe.
So I wonder.
I think for a lot of times, the fuel for college football was unleaded, and now we're kind of switching to diesel. And if you're still putting in unleaded fuel,
your analogy game has been on a heater lately. I'm just gonna say it. Give it a cap, sir.
Like if your school refuses to fill up your diesel tank and you're still trying to go with unleaded, you're gonna have a problem. Like you're gonna have issues.
We're not
changing sport.
We're not trying to like sit here being like make a headline. This podcast says Mark Stoops wants to leave, but it's just it makes you wonder. Again, we just saw Brian Kelly leave for Notre Dame for LSU, and it's not the same thing at all. But like, it's just human nature. As much as you can say, man, this is the perfect job, there is human nature that you eventually at a point, combined with the collective thing we're talking about, of like. It's just hard. It's hard to be like, I kind of want to prove I can do it somewhere else. And also there's other life things factor into, but like, I just wonder if he starts looking at some other things.
And there's an element too of if Mark Stoops sort of tells his agent to put some feelers out there, it's going to be real receptive. Yep. There's going to be a lot of places that are
I don't know how real it was, as you know, but like he was in a lot of, it's fake agent BS, all that, but like, and Scott Woodward BS too, probably, but like he was the other name out there is like what's the right word? The backup plan for LSU. Yeah. Like it might have been completely fake, but like with the fact that it's out there, what does that mean? You know what I'm saying? Like that Jimmy Sexton was cool with letting that out there. You just wonder. That's all.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Vanderbilt though. We should give them their flowers. We should listen. I really enjoyed watching Clark Lee after the game. He was getting choked up as well. Big week for post game.
Huge week for choked
interviews.
Up coaches.
Yes.
You know what gets me going, man? It's watching super hyper masculine middle aged men who coach football get choked up. That's my vibe.
Exactly. But I think when you just I felt it for Clark Lee because. Listen, Vanderbilt's working just as hard as everybody else.
Yep.
Like they obviously the talent issues and all the things that make it very hard to succeed at Vanderbilt for eternity. They're working just as hard as everybody else, and the results have not been there. So when you can go into not only did you break a 26-game SEC losing streak, but you go on the road, and then you go and beat a ranked team on the road. I was happy for Vanderbilt, man. I think it's a huge moment for them. And congrats to that program for breaking through.
And we don't need to go. We can wrap up shortly, but like it just comes to a point. What do we always like? Our theme on this show is like, or my obnoxious theme is like infrastructure, right? Like I'm not going to buy a program that's getting the flashy stuff at the top. I'm going to buy a program more that's like feels like something's building on the inside a little bit. And they're not winning a ton of games. They're not a good team. They're like 88th in SP Plus, which I think is a step up, by the way. But it's like they have like 7 games this year that they lost that they're in on, right? Like they had Wake Forest a little close at one point. They had Ole Miss like genuinely competitive for a while. They had Missouri lose by 3. They had South Carolina on the ropes and they beat Kentucky. I mean, I'm looking up at the chart right now, like SP Plus, their average projection was 16.6. Like they were supposed to lose by an average of 16.6 points every game. And it's actually been 8 points, which that's double. That's half. That's the stuff that's building blocks for the future. So man, like I'm all in, not all in, pump the brakes, but like, I believe in Clark Lee's take that they're going to be the best program.
SEC East champions 2023.
Well, what did he say at media days?
Like,
it's going to be the best program. Like maybe I'm in on that. What if I made that my weird like Ari with recruiting is just me saying, but mine is just Vanderbilt.
Listen, I will say having read Pete Sampson's All Access to the Eastern or to the East
really
Tennessee,
good read.
if you didn't read that story, I came away from that thinking, oh boy, oh boy, this could go bad in a hurry. And the fact that we're sitting here 2 years later, and you saw at the end of 2021, they were really getting competitive there at the end. They've had some rough moments in 2022, but happy for them to break through. And Clark Lee, the comparisons to Cadillac are not great, but he certainly does understand the program and does love the program. And I think that matters. So
absolutely.
Brody, we have some reckoning with our picks. I hit my bonus pick, which seemed like the easiest pick of the week. Bama on the road getting 2 touchdowns to Ole Miss was insane, and they almost lost that game. So we hit that one. But my actual pick of the week, I'm gonna throw the flag on this because we got a defensive score, we got some special team scores.
Wait, are you going to try to claim the Mississippi State?
No, but
because they should have lost by 40.
Well, but I had the under in that game, and
you took under. My bad. Well, okay.
Yes,
my bad. Yes.
I had the under. They're getting cooked by Ladd McConkey, which I got to tell you, if somebody named Ladd McConkey came in and started just absolutely roasting me and there's nothing I could do about it, that's got to be a tough place to be.
Because not just because you don't think that guy should be good, but also there's like, you hear a guy named Ladd McConkey, he's probably, a bit of a waspy brat, and he's going to make you feel bad.
You have to assume a member,
that guy's at a country club.
Future or current member of British Parliament, but no.
Or an Ole Miss baseball player.
One of the two, yes. And you're getting cooked by him. And I'm not so sure he's not Georgia's best receiver. So,
oh god, yeah, I'm ready to say it.
Yeah, and so I listen. I feel good about the pick, but sometimes good picks lose.
Yes.
So it is what it is. This week, Brody, I'm gonna tempt fate a little bit.
Ooh,
I'm gonna tempt fate.
Stunning.
And I'm gonna say that I don't think that South Carolina is going to be able to slow down Tennessee as much as we would think. Now, Tennessee, here's the thing. Tennessee on the road this year has not been great. LSU is kind of the only real anomaly in that group. Mm-hmm. But I don't think Tennessee is going to win that game by less than 21.5 points. So give me Tennessee minus 21.5 to go on the road, hang another 50 burger, and give up like 20. So I like Tennessee big in this one.
Okay, I like it. So I'm in a tough spot because I think I faded Auburn like 4 times, and I think I've been wrong every single time, especially last week, obviously.
Yes.
And I had A&M. My pick of last week was A&M against Auburn, I believe.
A worthwhile roast from producer John on Brody's A&M pick. I thought it was crazy. John thought it was crazy. That A&M team going on the road anywhere.
I'm a big believer that like 90% of betting is figuring out what a team's floor actually is. And I didn't think, and I'm like, no, okay, we hadn't found the floor yet. You think you've found it?
There is no floor for this Aggies.
You have not found it. So yes. So I don't think I'll bet, even though Western Kentucky plus 6.5, I love. Western Kentucky's a tough, good, exciting, explosive team. Like I love that.
I will
offense.
say one last point on A&M, Brody. Brody, if you had known that A&M would suspend a receiver for wearing sleeves, would you have rescinded that pick?
Maybe yes, because just again, vibes, man. This is a vibes podcast. Like the vibes are not good on that. Okay, I'm really struggling. I don't have one I love this week, but man, we're talking about bottoms. I kind of love Kentucky plus 23 at home. I'm gonna because Kentucky tends to I don't know. I have to look back at their past.
It's a buy low spot on Kentucky.
It's a buy low spot. 23 is crazy. They make games ugly.
The question with Kentucky is: Are you buying low on them that they're better than this, or is Kentucky just broken? Because part of me wonders if Tennessee might have broken Kentucky.
They really, really might be
because I do think that's a real thing. I think teams breaking teams. I think the worst case we ever saw, ironically, they were talking about on this show, I believe, was Jimbo's last year at Florida State when Florida State played Bama in that first game and they hurt DeAndre Johnson. I want to say, or who was the quarterback?
Francois.
DeAndre Francois, that's right. Yep. And that team just never recovered from that. I do think there's an element of teams breaking other teams. And I wonder if Tennessee did some of that to Kentucky. Okay. But maybe not.
No, I actually think you're right. I can't do it. All right, I'm going to do Arkansas plus 3. I think I found a plus 3 out there. Arkansas plus 3 against Ole Miss at home. I do not like that pick.
Okay.
Is KJ going to play?
Yeah, probably. I would guess. It seemed like he was close last week.
If he plays, yeah, I like the +3, man. At
Okay.
home, I'm still not the biggest Ole Miss guy, even though they've proven me wrong to a big extent.
I don't know what
No,
more they can do.
but here's the other factor in this, man. Like, I know we'll wrap up. Like, Ole Miss is like on 4 consecutive tough games. That compounds, man.
Yeah.
So I like Arkansas +3. Let's have fun with
That's a good point. I'll give you that. That's real. Fatigue is real. When
And
teams
KJ
are
Jefferson is a fatigue machine.
dude, KJ.
By the way, let's just say it. Arkansas wins that game with KJ Jefferson this week against LSU.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, that's
I
a
agree.
real thing. Also, we got robbed of Harold because Harold Perkins would have been spying no matter what, right? His whole role was QB spy. We got robbed of Harold Perkins trying to tackle like KJ Jefferson, and who wins that? That is why we watch football. Is that, and we got robbed. But we did get to watch him.
It's that gift from Godzilla of the guy staring off into the sunset. It's like, let them fight. Harold Perkins versus KJ Jefferson. I want to see that.
But we did get to watch him chase the fastest quarterback in like the SEC.
I couldn't believe he caught Malik Hornsby like
3 times, like from a 4-yard gap. Like,
that's the one thing Malik Hornsby does really, really well is he's uncatchable. But
I
apparently
watched it like over and over again to be like, was it like, sometimes you're running as a quarterback, but you're not running.
Yeah,
and at least 2 of them, he was running. Like, he was
Mm-hmm.
sprinting, and I'm just like, I think Andy said it was like watching Predator, and it's like that's exactly what it felt like. And yeah, we could do Perkins another time, but yeah. So yeah. I'm gonna go Arkansas.
I did. By the way, in the wake of the release of Prey, I watched the original Predator and Predator 2 for the first time. For the first time, like, I don't know, a couple months ago. They hold up. Good movies.
I believe it. I'm due for a rewatch.
Well, that does it for this week's episode of Football and Salmon. So thank you guys for joining in. This is the worst week of the season when we're used to big old like clashes, and then we get tossed into New Mexico State and smaller teams. This is the SEC's unofficial, oft criticized bye week, rightfully so, I must say. But we got an SEC championship looming. We got some good teams, and the playoff race will be fascinating. USC, UCLA this week will be very relevant to the Vols. Tennessee, don't worry about what anybody else in the SEC is doing. Go root for Baylor. Go root for UCLA. That's the most important thing for your hopes. So anyway, thank you guys for listening. Aggies, Wildcats, keep your heads up. Auburn, Godspeed to you because Caddy's coming. So thank you guys for listening. We'll see you guys next week.